So it's a beautiful day here in September. I mean, just awesome weather finally. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. I mean, I very rarely ever even sit down. I'm always on the go, but thought it was time to sit down and talk a little bit of fishing. Not necessarily do a lot of fishing, but talk some fishing. But talk some fishing just because we get questions asked all the time about, certain techniques or this or that. And I don't necessarily love that, a certain technique for a certain month, because depending on where you're at in the country, what your fisheries are like, it's completely different. I mean, I'm here in the Midwest in Kansas, and if I was to talk about a favorite technique, there's 10 different lakes here, and that different technique would depend on the fishery we're at. I mean, even here in the Midwest. So if I start talking about our whole country as a whole, I mean, that's really deceiving. So I mean, I hate doing those, and I feel like if you're learning about fishing, I think it's something that can lead you down the wrong path as well. So when it comes to fishing in September, I've jokingly said this, and don't take this the wrong way, but I always say September sucks. September is the worst month of the year, in my opinion, to fish. You'll notice it if you follow tournaments around the country. No matter where you're at, can be some of the best lakes in the country. The worst winning weights of the year in tournaments are in September. Now, with that being said, if it's northern parts of the country, it's completely different. And when I say that, your Great Lakes, your New Yorks, your Minnesotas, Wisconsin, those natural lakes, or your Great Lakes, that's not true. Those lakes are completely different. And if you really want to go have some awesome fishing, late August, September, early October, when the weather's starting to get nice, those are the places to go fishing, because it seems like the early fall conditions don't really affect those fisheries. If anything, it just makes them better. So if you want great fishing for this time of year, go north. Now, with that being said, back to everywhere else in the country, why do I say September sucks? And the reason is because, everybody thinks it's been super hot, the hottest conditions of the year into August. The water's the warmest of the year. So a lot of your fish start out in the summer super, super deep. As the summer progresses, a big portion of those fish come shallow. And I think the big reason is a lot of your bait fish are looking for the cooler water, the better oxygen. So that's where you have big mass migrations up your creeks and all that of your bait fish. And a lot of your bass in general will go super shallow in July and August. So it really spreads the fish out. You have some fish that are deep and some fish that are shallow. What happens in September, as things start to cool down? We've had a few cool nights here now where, it's finally gotten out of summer and we're starting to feel the effects of fall. The water starts to cool off, and then you start to get turnovers and all that, and it really messes up the oxygen in the lake. So it really freaks the fish out. So when it comes to early fall fishing and you want to go fishing, this is the time where you have to have the right mindset. And I think it's one of the things that's made me successful in a lot of grinder type tournaments, because where we grew up, in this part of the country, was if you could go out and catch five for your live well in a tournament, you were going to have a great day. And one of those that comes to mind is one of the very first boats I ever won was a Central Pro-Am tournament down at Truman Lake. It was, I think, early October. And I'd practiced a lot down there in September. But, I mean, it was a grinder type tournament where, there were some fish still deep, but there was some fish shallow. I ended up, winning the tournament on a big square bill, fishing super, super shallow. But I was only catching 5, 6, 7 fish a day, but, happened to get one big fish here or there. But I think this time of year, it's best to pick a technique that you like to fish, and you just have to stick with it and go with the mindset of you're going to grind it out. Now, with that being said, this time of year, probably your biggest bites are going to come on topwater. And knowing that you're not going to get as many bites, if you go out there with the mindset of I'm going to throw topwater, obviously morning and evening, you're going to have Probably some good action of fish feeding up shallow, but I still say some of the best times to fish topwater is in the middle of the day. So it's a great time when you're popping baits, you're walking baits, buzz baits, and then even the plopper style baits really start to shine and start produce. But with that being said, I look back at some of the tournaments where it was just pick up a flipping stick and go flip every piece of shallow cover I could. So it all depends on the type lake you're fishing, the species of fish that you're fishing in it. I mean, I can think of, like I said, here in the Midwest, I mean, I'm going to fish Truman Lake completely different than if I go down a couple hours down the road to Table Rock Lake or over to Lake of the Ozarks. So it really depends on, the type of fishery you have. I mean, Lake of the Ozarks down the road, there's probably two different patterns. One is go up the river, fish the shallow rocks and shallow docks of those fish that are moving up shallow, and you catch them, that way. But a big portion of the fish are still going to be out on the deeper brush piles, and guys are going to get out and fish brush piles. So it really depends on the fishery you fish. We've got a couple lakes right down the road here that are smallmouth. So that's a completely different deal. If I'm going to go smallmouth fish, I'm going to be focused a lot on topwater because, it seems like your better smallmouth are going to hit your topwater baits. And then if they're not biting that, the typical grind it out with a Ned rig or a tube or something like that. Don't throw a drop shot because for some reason it seems like the smallmouth in this part of the country don't like a drop shot. So, if you're down in Florida and those type places, it's more schooling fish. So, the other big thing that I think is a big deal in the fall is the forage. It seems like it's really a time where your fish are feeding on shad. A lot of this is where your shad have spawned in the early summer, late spring, early summer. So those shad fry are starting to get to that size. So a lot of times your bait fish are small, but the fish are really gorging themselves on shad this time of year, and that's where matching the hatch with shad type of baits. I mentioned topwaters, but something that comes to mind. This is a time of year where a lot of your small baits really seem to shine. Your little tiny finesse crankbaits, your BFS stuff. I mean, I look back at some of the years fishing Truman back in the day, early in the fall, was fishing little 1/4 ounce spinner baits and stuff like that, smaller stuff to match the hatch. So if you're getting out there, remember that, match the hatch. The fish are feeding on smaller bait fish. So, you want to fish smaller baits. Now, as things cool off, and you start to see more of those bigger gizzard shad start to show up, that's when those big fish really start to get up in those areas where the big gizzard shad is, and really start to gorge themselves on those big shad. So that's when your bigger baits start to shine. But that's more of a October, November, when things start to cool off and your temperatures get down in the 50s. And I think it's what it is. I think this time of year, the fish they're just kind of lazy. I mean, they're kind of like what we would be in the hot of the summer. You don't feel like doing a whole lot. It's because it's hot, so your metabolism's not real good. You're just kind of lazy trying to stay cool, and things cool off, you get more active. And I think that's the same thing with fish. When things start to cool off, it's finally a realization to them of, wow, winter's right around the corner. I gotta fatten up and put a lot of weight on before the temperatures get too cold and I get so lethargic from being cold that I better have that fat put on. So there is that transition, but like I said, early in the fall, like we're in right now, late summer, early fall, things are going to be tough, and you have to recognize that and pick a couple techniques and know that it's probably going to be a grind. As things start to get colder, that's the time to really start paying attention. So ultimately, I always tell people, if you're a hunter, this is the time to get everything ready for hunting and practice and shooting your bow and all that. But if you're fishing, this might be a good time to shift gears, really get all your equipment working good, change line, get rods, get everything reorganized, and get ready for that later fall bite that's right around the corner here. So there it is. In summary, we get a lot of questions, and please send them. We love getting the questions, but some of them are pretty generic. And like I said, as I mentioned early in this video, it's really hard to pick just one particular bait or a certain technique for this time of year. And this is, like I said, it's one of the toughest times of the year, and it really depends on your body of water, what type of body of water it is, if it's deep, shallow, a natural northern lake versus a, a, a reservoir or something like that. And then the type of fish that you're fishing. Water clarities are a big part of that as well. But be sure to keep sending the questions along. We're going to spend more time answering those questions and hopefully helping you all get out there and catch more fish.